this report reads almost like a post-mortem of a world-class Aussie industry being systematically dismantled, its institutions closing doors after decades of success and thousands out of work.
International education was always sung by politicians, by business people, by everyone as win-win-win. Visa fees just gone up. People talk about, well, that visa fee, it's a tax. It goes into general revenue. Well, how about we start funding some programs that actually come back into international education, that support transparency, support genuine openness, support students' intent. What we're seeing is all this money seems to be going out and into general revenue, but not much is being invested back into the system.
G'day and welcome to Global Horizons. I'm your host, Rob Malicki, coming to you today from Garigal Land in Sydney.
And I'm Dirk, Mulder, the CEO and founder of the Koala News. I'm coming to you from Dirk country, just to the west of Sydney.
I think you can call yourself a host as well, can't you, Dirk?
Co-host, how about that?
Partner in crime.
Partner in crime, I love it.
It's the week of 16 February as we're recording. Yeah, the year's already off and running well and truly, isn't it, Dirk? We've got a few things to talk about this week. What are we going to be talking about?
Mate, we are. English Australia's released an amazing data report that looks at visas for 2025. And then we might skip into the new International Student Representative Council. They've appointed an expert panel. We'll head down and have a think about what's been going on in ELICOS and how the industries are responding to it. There's a change.org petition. Germany, one of the things that was spoken about, alternate destinations, have broken some records in the last couple of weeks. And finally, I think we'll finish off with a little bit about AIEC and the call for proposals. How's that sound, Rob?
It sounds good, man. It's already on, isn't it? This year is like, we're already talking about AIEC. It's great.
Yeah, 100%.
Maybe before we get into it, how's your week been?
Mate,
we should have a natter before we actually give people the news, shouldn't we?
I think it's reflective of what we just said. It's been busy. Yeah, lots going on. Lots going on in the, certainly in terms of communications, in terms of, the National Symposium for the IAA was on Friday. But it's just been, it's been hectic. I feel like there was a long launch pad to the start of the year, which didn't necessarily go up quickly, but suddenly in the last week or two, it's gone up very quickly.
Suddenly it's like mid-February and you're like, oh my gosh, all that stuff I had planned to get tidied up in January is like 2 weeks late.
Yep. January's gone.
Yeah, I totally feel that. And I've got a few travel commitments coming up. So all this stuff I've been very thorough organising everything. Like everything's lined up to be done. And suddenly I looked at my calendar and went, oh gosh, I'm in Perth next week. Then I'm up in New England area, the week after that. And suddenly it's, first week of March is done. Yeah, all that stuff that's been sitting there really needs to get done right now. Actually, mate, did you get to see the email I sent you earlier? The avatar stuff that I sent through to you?
Or not, mate. How slack is this? I saw it come in and I was preparing for this. So, but I will be looking at it.
Oh, mate, you're distant.
And I do want to have a chat to you because I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to try and do something similar for the news just to give it a go and see how it goes. So I think if we can exchange some notes on that tech, that could be something unique and something different.
Yeah, for sure. And for listeners, this is not contrived. Literally, I was messaging Dirk this morning for choosing your uni. We've just released this. It's a prototype, but it is just freaking wild. It's called Uni Avatar, and it's basically like it's me for now, but we'll put a different face on it, But it's essentially an AI video chatbot trained on data. So I've sent one to Dirk about a particular institution, and you can literally have a conversation with an avatar of me, video avatar. The voice isn't quite right yet. We've got plenty of stuff we still need to refine. But mate, I think when people see this, we're starting to drip it out, over the next week or so to some colleagues just to play with. I think people are just going to be probably frightened, to be honest. The technology is absolutely wild. Yeah, so offline, we'll be getting to that after the news.
No, I had a conversation with a CEO of a private last week, and they were talking about developing policies on AI and just how quickly it's moving. And probably the best approach for all of these things. And it came off the back of that Australian, I think, article where, where the Australian, I think, was talking about Australian universities not doing enough in the AI space and all of that. And it's just moving so quickly that the only way you really can look at it is through a framework because, you say this is in, this is out, and literally a week or two later, the technology's moved on. It's moving so quickly. That then butted up against a video. I mean, I was, sort of dead scrolling the other day and saw a video of a guy. I think he was being interviewed by, the CEO Whisperer or whatever it is, the guy from the UK, and, talking about futurism and, that robots humanized robots will be active in society by 2030. And you got to think that's only 4 years away. And then by the end of the century or in 50 years' time, they can't predict it because things will move that quickly. And the example that they gave was at the moment, a new iPhone comes out. You can see what the specs are, it's in development. But technology will move that quickly that a new iteration of the technology for an iPhone will literally be done, in the space of a couple of months. And then as AI learns, it'll be done in the space of a week. And we'll get to the point where new iterations of technology around an iPhone could be done literally daily because it's going to move that fast. And when it moves that fast, how do you, I can't even imagine. So I'm looking forward to seeing your avatar is the upshot of all of that, Rob.
Yeah, look, mate, I got really excited. So we've been obviously we're an AI company, so we're like working heaps in that space, and it's just every day you're finding something new and interesting. We've been working on this one for a little while. That's what I find exciting about it is that Generation GPT, what I call them, they have this expectation that 24/7, 365, they get an answer to any question about anything they want to ask. It's personalized, it's instant. It's detailed, it supports them with their personal case, blah, 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 blah. And that's just going to be the default expectation going forward. So as we've been working on this, I'm just been getting more and more excited about bringing that kind of human, it's kind of funny calling it human, but it's a visual element to it, right? It's not just a chat where you're typing or you're talking to it, but actually talks back. It's absolutely wild. Anyway, we didn't mean to go there, and now I've completely distracted everyone from our...
No, well, I just want to say one more thing. As you go up to UNE, I think it's next week you mentioned, talk about this stuff, because UNE have got a really big push into the AI space and uptake amongst students and staff and utilisation of AI. So this could be really right up their alley, mate. It really, it's fascinating stuff, and I think it's going to find a good footing there.
Let me just put another thing into that, and then I promise listeners, we will get to the news at some point today. But if you think about teaching, right, like face-to-face teaching and individualized learning and stuff like that, like amazing teachers will always be a valuable commodity. But for a lot of that kind of just-in-time learning where you need someone to guide you through, a specific action or a specific set of tasks, personalized to you, your style of learning. Like when you see this video avatar stuff, mate, I think you'll see it and just be like, wow, that's going to really change the way that everything is done. Teaching is done, all sorts of things done. It's definitely coming. But how about we get into the news? English Australia. So they've got a fairly important report out here.
Yeah, mate. So annually they do essentially a data report on student visas for the previous year, and they've just released their 2025 full year report. Mate, it's pretty breathtaking stuff.
Bleak reading.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I guess as an asterisk up front, available to English Australia members on their website. So it is behind a paywall. It is one of those things that they do for their membership base. But Ian Ed, who's the CEO there, we had a good discussion about it, and he was happy for me to run a story on it. So if you do go to the Koala News, that story is up. I highly recommend you read it. But yeah, Ian's been very gracious in terms of looking and allowing me to use some of the data out of that to form a story more generally. Yeah, like I said, pretty breathtaking stuff and pretty sad if you're in the ELICOS sector. It basically shows that visa numbers, just looking at my sheet here, I want to get this right, 25% fewer independent ELICOS visa applications granted than in 2005.
2005.
So we're a quarter less than 20 years ago. Mate, if that's not a headline, if that doesn't grab you, then how about that equate? So if that doesn't grab you, then the sobering, I guess, outtake of that is that there's the loss of those students has meant a loss of, English Australia believes, between 5,000 and 9,500 full-time equivalent jobs. That's pretty bloody startling, mate. I've got to tell you, it's pretty hard. So what's caused it? There's a whole bunch of stuff. So on the 1st of July 2024, the government increased the non-refundable student visa application fee from, as you would remember, $710 to $1,600. Independent ELICOS visa applications fill immediately. This then went up to $2,000, and we saw another decline on top of that. And I think English Australia's point here is a really, really good one, because if you think about a university student, a $2,000 visa fee increase is an overall cost adjustment of 3 to 4% upwards, right? Because you take into account your course fees and all the rest, and yeah, it bumps it up. It's a little bit. But when you apply that to an independent ELICOS course, you're looking at a 30 to 40% overall cost increase. Now, I've been in forums where the government said, oh, well, we think that isn't a cause because we saw numbers being moved prior to that. Well, of course, numbers were being moved prior to that because we were messing around with different elements of the visa system. But this is significant, right? And if this report, and hopefully, some of the majors will pick this up, but if this report and some of the stats that come out of this don't make people sit up, or maybe they will make people sit up and then just shrug their shoulders and say it's not important. I don't know. But for me, and being someone who is very proud of the international education sector, this is a death knell, mate, and the data's now showing it.
The way you've written this up, I think, is the perfect summary. That this report reads almost like a post-mortem of a world-class Aussie industry being systematically dismantled, its institutions closing doors after decades of success and thousands out of work. Yeah, devastating. And once again, thanks to English Australia for letting you write this up as an exclusive. Make sure you jump on the Client News and read that because we need people to be aware of this. This is actually going on.
Yeah, and again, look, we've spoken about it. I think at the moment, if you're in higher ed, you're keeping in your lane, right? Because higher ed's not doing too badly. But if you're in higher ed, now's the time to start looking across at other sectors. ELICOS has long been the canary in the coal mine, and while these splits have not necessarily mattered, we're not just seeing smaller private colleges go under. There was one university, English Language Centre, that went under this year. There's a whole myriad of these of consequences or ripples that come from a non-robust English language sector. And so if you're in higher ed, I think it's really important that, we look at colleagues in other sectors and say it's important that we have a stable system across the board, not just, I'm okay, Jack, bad luck. We need to be looking at this more holistically.
Removes competition, removes choice, leads to price increases and other things. So it does have consequences across the sector. Actually, just a little side note of that. Last week, I published an episode of the podcast, detailed conversation, in-depth conversation with Ian Ed, CEO of English Australia. It's a really nice conversation recorded at AIEC last year. So if you haven't heard that, Ian tells some great yarns. Very, very generous person.
I saw it pop up and I thought, I know Ian pretty well, so I thought I've got to watch this. It just provides such a great insight into, the guy that is Ian, the way that he approaches things. And I love, as you say, some of those little side stories are amazing. More so, what I think I really loved about it was you get a really good insight into the way that he approaches issues. And not that he's got I think he went to great lengths to say there is no formula, but the way that he looks at information and goes through it, it's fascinating to see, to be able to kind of reach in and have a really good look. It's amazing. So congratulations to you in getting that information out of him too.
It was great. It was one of those great conversations where, it's this awesome blend of, the sort of personal stories, travel stories, but then also really strays into leadership and advocacy and all sorts of good stuff. I was really, really stoked how that one came out. And talking about advocacy, so the international student community is taking another step towards stronger national representation. How about we dive into this one, man?
Yeah, so this was an announcement earlier this week, late last week. The International Student Representative Council has appointed an expert panel, which I think is a really, really smart thing. So the the inaugural panel is Patricia Davidson, who obviously is the ex-VC at Wollongong, Danielle Hartridge, who obviously has a very, very large background in student advocacy and support, and Gabby Ramia from the University of Sydney. So again, congratulations to the ISRC. Good luck to Patricia, Danielle and Gabby, who will be assisting them on their journey. And, again, as a base level, having a strong student voice and an advocacy from the students is something that's been really missing over the last 4 to 5 years since COVID. And fingers crossed we can get that back on track. It'd be really good to have Wei Hong on one day and Wei Hong's the president of the ISRC, and maybe get him to tell a little bit about the journey that they've been on and those sorts of things. So maybe we can schedule that in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's a good idea because it's one of those projects. There's a lot to rebuild in that space. It'd be interesting to know strategically where they're heading, what the priorities are, what the kind of rollout order is, because small organisations like this that do important advocacy work, it takes time to get them up to scale. So it'd be interesting to hear how that's progressing for sure. So let's do that. Let's get Wei Hong on in the next couple of pods. Now, this is an interesting one. When you sent over the run sheet, I went, oh, this is not the kind of thing you normally see on change.org. A petition targeting onshore the commission ban. As things esoteric petitions go, this is probably right up there.
I agree. Yeah, so I mean, for viewers who haven't been listening or haven't been following along or need a bit of a background, one of the changes that was brought through earlier in the year was that the government is imposing a commissions ban on essentially transfers within the course duration of any student who might want to leave a course early and go to another institution. Previously, they could go to an agent onshore, and that agent onshore would obviously be remunerated as they normally would be for providing advice and providing services of transfer, etc., by the institution that receives that student. The government's seeking to, or the government has enabled a ban on that, and that comes into play on 1 April. So there's this kind of, I want to say it's a grace period, but there's a lead-in period. And we've seen, on LinkedIn and out there some pretty average behaviour on behalf of some players or some players in the sector about you kind of, getting in before 1 April and doing all these things. It's not to say, so this ban is not to say that an agent can't receive money directly from the student for their services, so it would be a fee for payment. But as you say, it's not the thing that you would see on change.org. So my understanding was there was a meeting of the Migration Education Consultants Alliance of Australia last week in Melbourne, and that's where this petition came from. When I wrote this story up yesterday, there were 911, I believe, 910 signatories to it. There's now I checked earlier this morning, it was 960, so it's grown up by about 50 in the space of, since yesterday afternoon to this morning. It'll be interesting to see that number and whether how that rises or what the deal is. Now, I suspect they're not going to have much luck, right? I think the government is bolted to this, and they're not going to move. But what it does do is signal, and I think, to be fair, for the first time that I can recognise, is a public pushback from any part of the sector against government changes. So it'll be interesting to see if this is part of a broader campaign or whether it's a one-off. But yeah, it's definitely A, not something you'd see on Change, but B, it's going to be it's the start of something new that we've probably never seen before, and being a little bit more aggressive in the public light.
It's an interesting one. I can actually see why the government wanted to shut down this space. I mean, yeah, it's one that it doesn't look good. Even if people are acting ethically and honestly, it just doesn't look good on paper. So I can completely understand why they would just want to sort of close the door on that. And realistically, if organisations are operating ethically and openly, then okay, charge students a fee for service for supporting them to make a change. And of course, that whole process is getting more complicated now anyway with, sorry, has that gone through like the talk? No, it's just talk at the moment, isn't it? About one visa for one program of study. And if you want to swap over, then it's potentially a new visa. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah.
But that's not legislated, is it? That's just
no, I'm pretty sure that's in place now. So if
that's it. Okay, yeah.
So if you want to, so let's not confuse it. You've got a student visa, which has a COE attached to it. When that's completed, you need to apply for a new visa. So I think where the confusion comes in, and what I was going to mention is, I think everyone agrees that course hopping and assisted or
manipulated,
where students are induced to do it, is a very, very bad thing. The mechanism in which the government's gone about ceasing this, I would say, it's gone on way too long. So I mean, I remember writing stories on this 3 weeks after the borders opening from COVID, right? Like, this is an area in New Zealand, I think they call it, was it waka hopping or something? It was like canoe hopping. So this has been an issue for, a number of years. What major players in the sector, and I point to Ravi Lokansingh, who probably was one of the first voices, was let's do away with the notion of you've got a COE. Let's try and link that visa to the program. So if you do want to change your course, there's a financial imperative to go and get a new visa. So that's a disincentive. Incentivization, that was the word I was looking for, Rob.
Yeah,
so there's a de-incentivization. Where I think this maneuver, and again, two different mechanisms to try and solve the same problem, I don't think, in my view, this one is as probably pertinent or as transparent or as good as potentially tying a visa to a program and then having a student having to front up at Home Affairs to explain why they're changing courses. Now, maybe that's a role Home Affairs doesn't want to take on. I would say that is their role, right? Like the minister's talking about, there is reasons for either course hopping or not moving courses. Let's have a system in place for that. And, Home Affairs, are they resourced well enough? Visa fees just gone up. People talk about, well, that visa fee, it's a tax. It goes into general revenue. Well, how about we start funding some programs that actually come back into international education, that support transparency, support genuine openness, supports students' intent. What we're seeing is all this money seems to be going out and into general revenue, but not much is being invested back into the system by these changes that have been made. I think there was a better way to do it. And I do feel for education agents who are genuine and who have been there to support students who come to them in tears and goes, this isn't the course that I signed up for. I want to change it to something else. And they find, a comparable course at a price that's going to lead to comparable outcomes. I think that's going to be the missing bit. So essentially what they've said is, well, the market, that's your problem now. We're not having this anymore. Whereas I think the government could have played a role in this to make it much fairer for everyone.
Yeah. Thanks for breaking that down. Yeah, appreciate it. Because it's one of those, it's a very complex little space, actually. It looks...
nothing in international education is simple anymore, that's for sure. It's just getting more and more complex.
Yeah, it's interesting. It makes me think, many years ago, I was on campus at Uni of Melbourne, standing in front of a beautiful clock tower and doing a little bit of filming work. And there were a couple of Asian students there, clearly not Uni of Melbourne students, but they had flyers and they were literally they were profiling. This is crazy, right? But they're literally profiling students and approaching students to basically saying, want to leave your Uni of Melbourne degree and come down the road here and what have you.
Yeah, I mean,
they had flyers for it. It was so brazen. It was so brazen. I remember standing there just thinking, wow, I mean, I guess it's kind of public space to some extent, so they're allowed to be wherever they want. But yeah, it was really, really kind of over the top. So something had to happen, but it's very complex and nuanced and everything. So, mate, thanks for keeping us abreast of all of the ongoing changes. And of course, all this stuff ends up flowing into international student numbers and growth and everything else. And maybe going to have a look at Germany because it's booming, ain't it? It's just continue to go up and up and up.
Yeah, and look, I mean, this is, again, for those that are recent listeners to the podcast, we've been talking about, I guess, alternate destinations for quite some time, and Germany's been leading that pack, and we've been keeping an eye on it. And again, they've just broken another record. So ELICOS Kirley from Germany wrote in last week, and according to the DAD, which is the German Academic Exchange Services, there's now 420,000 international students studying in Germany and growing. So that's amazing. That's up from 402,000 just a year ago. And if you look at some of the stats, I mean, if we think about, in the last 5 years, and so 2021, it was 289,000. So, to go up to 420, that's a sizable or a decent growth period for that to happen. Mate, they seem to be welcoming of international students. Seem to have all the mechanisms in place. It'll be interesting to see, as to when they become larger, more robust, whether they have some of the perceived teething problems that we might have at the moment, being a large supplier of international education. But when we talk about, where are the students going, Germany's certainly one place.
Once again, if you're relatively recent to the industry, Germany's still interesting because it's still essentially free for international students. There are some exceptions to that. There's some of the states in Germany, some specific programs, there might be fees attached. But by and large, you can go to Germany as an international student and get a very good quality of education and essentially pay a couple of €1,000.
And where they're really kicking goals is in STEM, right? So, Germany's known for its engineering and kind of in STEM areas. So they're doing really, really well. They're bringing on more and more English taught programs. So, their capacity is going to grow. It's definitely one to watch.
Definitely one to watch. Just sort of makes me think more broadly, Dirk, about, international student flows all around the world and how Germany really rising, all this stuff going on in America. I mean, things are bumping there. Oh, what did I just see in the news the other day? There was something else about, anyway, let's not go down. Let's not go to the America. That's just getting too complicated. It's just so much. Sorry, let me back up. Would you have thought 20 years ago, we've both been international for a long time, would you have thought that the world would look the way it does right now 20 years ago?
I wouldn't have thought it 4 or 5 years ago. It's it's pretty incredible. Probably the hardest thing for me to reconcile internally, if I can put it that way, is, like you say, we've been international ed 25 years. I reckon for all but the last 3 or 4 of those, international education was always sung by politicians, by business people, by everyone as win-win-win. Universities obviously have a different funding mechanism. Students are getting a great education, where we get skills out of it. There just didn't seem to be a downside. And I don't believe there is at the moment. But the right-wing view on migration at present, and that this is a global phenomenon, seems to want to link international students to some of the problems that we're having for not building houses and having, all sorts of different ways. And I'm not saying, our immigration policies are perfect, but what I am saying is I think, governments hanging on to threads which aren't necessarily very strong ones in order to pump prime a view that maybe isn't 100% correct. And that's been the disappointing thing. When you say how things have changed, that's probably the bit for me. It was, it was always, this is a really good thing for everyone. And now it seems to be not a good thing for anyone. So
yeah, and once again, like mid-Feb 2026 we are at the moment. To timestamp it a little bit, Susan Lee has just been deposed as the opposition leader for the Liberal Party. Angus Taylor has replaced her. I feel like even just in the last couple of days since that's happened, there's been a marked strengthening of rhetoric from Angus Taylor about immigration. No surprise, the Liberal Nationals have been bleeding votes to One Nation. The polls are, the coalition could only look at that as to say they're utterly catastrophic. One Nation on the ascendancy. So I just feel, Dirk, that like we're heading back into this territory again. We felt like we'd kind of sailed out of those waters with the thumping Labor win last year. I don't know, man. It feels like we're heading back into...
I agree with you 100%. I think there's a certain irony to this. So I had from a couple of people this morning a WhatsApp message that's been floating around some of these WhatsApp groups that widely spread. I don't personally belong to them, but I get snippets every now and then. And one of the snippets that is circulating this morning was the coalition's policy on student working hours into the 2025 election. And their proposal was that they were going to lift working hours to 60 hours a fortnight, so 30 hours a week. So this goes to show just how inconsistent policy is within some of these parties. How this policy gets developed, mate, I'd love to be a fly on the wall because I personally just do not understand how these policies get developed. And again, it's my gut feel is like yours. It's all based on polling data. So, immigration polls well. So we need to be, in this space. And then they start looking for things to do in that space. And they're just hitting the wrong notes all the time. Again, I said this to someone on the phone yesterday. When you start thinking about these things, if you were going to have an immigration debate around what's good for the country, surely we must be looking at immigration cohorts that have high dependency of housing needs, that are low contributors economically, and we need to start looking at those as saying, well, they're the groups that we need to deprioritise. When you look at it from a student point of view, there was a great graph that was put up by the Productivity Commissioner at the IEAA symposium, where if I get this wrong, I do apologise, but the contribution of international education students to housing prices or to housing availability was 0.5%. Then when you put on the flip of that, what are the economic contributions of international students? You go, well, they're low on one end and they're high on the other.
And they're giving back. Like,
why are we targeting
what are we doing
when we've got groups that have significant housing requirements and they contribute very minimally to the economy? So I think that's the discussion that we should be having more broadly, rather than just going out and throwing things up against a wall and seeing what sticks. Because as the English Australia report has shown, by having an approach of targeting, in my opinion, the wrong cohorts, we're seeing job losses. We're going to see, when the current account comes in the next year or so, our export losses, significant. You only got to go back, I think it was a year and a half, where the ANZ economists were saying, if international education wasn't a mix in the economy, we would have gone into recession. So when we start thinking about it in the big boy terms, and I shouldn't say big boy because that could be gender specific, but when we talk about it in a macro sense, we are consciously descaling one of our major export industries that has very minimal impact on the issues that we're talking about. And it's crazy. But, many people will disagree with me, and that's okay.
All right, maybe to wrap us up, Dirk, as I was saying at the top, AIEC, we're already talking about it. But this is a big one this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, I just want to... Does it feel like 2 weeks ago we were in Canberra? And we were treading the floors of the Canberra Convention Centre. It's unbelievable, as we said earlier, how quickly time flies. But yeah, we're in February. AIC's just put out, their first announcement for conference papers. They're obviously looking for exhibitors, et cetera, et cetera. It's their 40th year this year, so it marks a really big one. And so congratulations to AIC, to IDP, and to IEAA, the joint conveners, I guess, of AIEC. Highlights, I mean, it's going to be in Sydney from the 27th to the 30th of October. As per always, we encourage people to get in for early voyage. You're going to save a bit of money. Not only do you save money, but it allows the conference planners to be able to understand, how many numbers they might be coming through the door. But yeah, there's an information session Friday the 27th of February at 1 p.m. to support potential presenters. So get along to that if you are thinking about presenting. And then there's a deadline of the 20th of March 2026 for those who are wanting to put in proposals and submit them via the submissions portal. So there's some key dates coming into over the next sort of month or so to start getting prepared for AIEC in October.
You've been to AIEC before, but haven't presented. Can I urge you to think about standing up and putting your hand up to present or do something there? It's great to hear, the amazing, knowledgeable, experienced people in our industry talking year after year. But I think new voices is always such a good thing. And it's such a great opportunity for you professionally to put your hand up and share your knowledge with the industry. So it seems really scary, maybe, putting your hand up for the first time, but it really is a great experience, great opportunity for you to consolidate some of your knowledge and share it with a wider audience. So yeah, if you're never presented at AIEC, good opportunity to go along to one of those sessions, find out more about it and start maybe building some ideas about what you can present at the conference come October.
100%. Mate, I remember when I was a young fella and I didn't have grey hair, sitting in some of these forums and, then you go for morning tea afterwards and you go, oh, I really wanted to ask this question, but I really wasn't sure. And I remember somebody pulling me aside one day who was quite, prolific in the public space, if I could put it that way. And they just said to me, mate, they're great questions. Why didn't you stick your hand up? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I'm nervous. I'm this. And they went, guaranteed, if you're thinking it, there's a ton of other people in this room that are thinking exactly the same thing. And that would be my advice to anyone, thinking about presenting or have an idea about something that might be new. If you're thinking it, there's probably 100 or so people across the sector thinking exactly the same thing. So don't be shy. Put your best foot forward and, throw caution to the wind, get up there, have a go.
Yeah, I must have presented the first time when I was only a couple of years into my career at an AIEC. But you'd be amazed, right? What you do day in, day out is unique to what you do day in, day out. And sharing those kind of insights and learning can just open doors for people. So stuff that you might think is just, this is just what I do, can actually be revolutionary to the way that other people work. So yeah, don't think that what you do is ordinary. It can be really helpful for others. Anyway, end soapbox. That was a nice soapbox, though, wasn't it?
It was a very nice soapbox.
Yeah, I'm going to pat myself on the back for that one. Dirk, mate, always great to chat. Thanks again for all of the work you do at the Koala News. And for those of you listening along, if you're one of the 10 people in the industry that's not on the Koala News email newsletter list, you need to be thekoalanews.com. And of course, follow along on LinkedIn as well to get all of the breaking news updates. Really appreciate it, mate. What's next coming up for you? You got any travel coming your way?
The middle of March at this point. I don't know whether it's announced yet, so I've got to be a little bit careful. But yeah, middle of March, I'll be speaking at a conference. Maybe we can cover that in the next one. Like I said, I'm not sure whether it's public yet. So that's coming up. There's a few different things coming up. Obviously, I'm not sure, but obviously I want to give Universities Australia their conference a plug. That's happening in a week and a half, 2 weeks in Canberra, and then there's a bunch of things that are coming up beyond that. So more towards May and June. So it's starting to pick up, and then once we get over the hump of the year, I mean that's when all the fun starts and some of these major forums start happening. So yeah, it's gonna start picking up shortly and probably won't stop until the end of the year.
I did get an email from somebody the other day, yesterday, just saying, oh yeah, I'm going to API, that's Australia Pacific Conference, of course. And I went, oh my God, yeah, already.
Yep, Hong Kong this year. So for those of you that haven't got your tickets, get into it. I've started seeing all the LinkedIn buzz on it. So it's again, what a great conference. So
go on, mate. All right, we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Thanks as always for everything you do.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Rob.
See you next time. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Global Horizons podcast, consider subscribing to our newsletter. Search for Global Horizons podcast and then just pop in your email address, and that way you will never miss out on all of the critical international education news that you need to stay up to date with. This episode has been produced on Garrigal Land in Sydney. Our video and audio editor is Len Zamora, and I'm your host, Rob Malicki. Have an awesome day. See you in the next episode.